David, it was less than a month before your 17th birthday when the Nazis invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. Before you talk about your life during the war and the Holocaust, let's start first with you telling us about your family, your community, and yourself in Kozienice before the war began.
Well, I was born September 27, 1922, and when the Germans attacked Poland September 1st, I was 16 years old. I was going to school I worked in my father's factory, sometimes after school, and helping him. My father had a shoe factory, and I had about 25 to 30 people working, and we sold shoes wholesale all over the country. And we lived in a big house. We had a maid and had two sisters and a brother. My parents were only in the 40s. And we lived in a nice neighborhood across from a big church. We had a good life. But when the Germans came in...
David, I'm going to ask you a couple questions before you tell us about the Germans coming in. Tell us, how large was your family?
Well, my father had 4 more brothers, younger than he. My grandfather was a wholesale business, had a wholesale business. We're selling supplies for shoemaking, supplies for fishing industry, and supplies for casket making, and supplies for paint, a big business. And they all brothers were working there. My father was the first one, so he got married and went on his own. And my sister was 18 or 19 when the Germans came in. My little brother was 12 and my little sister 8.
Your little sister was 8, okay. David, I was going to also ask you something you shared with me. You told us that your father had a shoemaking business. On the sole of the shoes was stamped a goat.
A goat. And the town of my hometown is named Kozienice, means nothing happened to the goat. That's the name of the town. Because my area was a lot of wild goats, so they named it Kozienice, means goats. And there was a prince, a king or something years ago, before I was born, and he went hunting, and his wife yelled, "Nothing happened to the goat, he couldn't shoot good." So they named it...
Nothing happened to the goat.
Kozienice, that's it.
David, once the Germans occupied Poland on September 1st, 1939, your life and that of your family changed swiftly and dramatically. Tell us what happened once the Germans came in.
When the Germans attacked Poland, they bombarded every little town, every big city, and everybody was running away. We ran out our house and we went to stay in the forest because our home was bombarded, the area. After the Germans came in, September 9, they came into our town. And when we came to our house, everything was open, the doors was open, the windows open, Germans hanging around in my house and plundering, taking whatever they can. And they took our food, our clothing, they took all the shoes. We had a warehouse in the back of the yard. Everything was ransacked. And we came in scary, and the Germans were laughing and making fun of us. And one German officer asked my father, why are you so scared, and all the Jews always scare people, they scare. I said, because the reason we are so scared, we don't want to fight, we love everybody, we don't believe in violence. And they laughed, making fun of us. And then they took everything, even my mother's linen, the linen from the house they took out. Dishes, they took the dishes. They took food, all the food we had. We couldn't get no food anymore. And all the stores were ransacked. And they had curfews, we couldn't go out in the house. So I always sneaked out of the house, and I tried to find food. And there was a German group of soldiers near a lake not far from our home. Had a compound, a lot of people, a lot of German soldiers there, and they had a field kitchen. And I went there to look for food. So I took a bucket, like a pot with a handle like a bucket. I took it out and went to that place where the Germans were eating and cooking their food. But when I came over there, there was a lot of other young people and a lot of young women, also with buckets and with pots, and waiting for the Germans to give them leftover. But I was the only Jew because the Jewish people were scared to go to see a German. But all the other people there were not Jewish, were Christians. And all of my friends, we went to school together, we played soccer together, they were neighbors, and some of their parents were working for my father's factory. But when they saw me, they pointed the finger at me, that I'm a Jude, to the Germans, pointing at my finger. And they were my friends, they grew up together.
But they were letting the Germans know you were a Jew.
But a lot of Germans came over and gave me the barley and beans pork soup. A thick barley and beans and pork. And we Jewish people were not allowed to eat pork. My mother wanted to touch it when I came back home. So my grandfather told her, throw away the pork and eat it because it's not a sin. To survive, you have to eat anything you can. We couldn't get to the bakery because everything was locked up. No stores was open. They were ransacked, and the Germans had curfews. We couldn't get out, so we had to eat something to eat. So this was the first encounter. My mother was crying all the time, crying and praying. She was praying. And my father used to say, God doesn't listen to her anymore.
David, it's at some point soon after, you were forced into the ghetto. Tell us about the ghetto, what that was like for you.
Well, the neighborhood where we lived was a nice Christian area, and we had a nice big home, which is still there now. I'm the only one who owns it, but I didn't claim it, so the Polish government said I owe a lot of money for taxes. So somebody is living there, and I don't even care for that house. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't live in Poland if they paid me $1 million every day. So I rather live here.
So
what happened?
In the ghetto, yeah.
They told us the first few days they told us to put a Star of David on our door. That live Jewish people live here. So then they give us an order that we have to move out. All the Jewish people who live in the Christian area have to move to a Jewish neighborhood, and they made a ghetto. The Germans put barbed wire, and they give us one room. We used to have about 6-7 rooms in our house. We had a room for our maid who used to live with us. So we got one room in somebody else's apartment. So the Germans grabbed me to work every day somewhere else. But one day, the Germans was digging a irrigation canal about 6 miles out of my town. And they took about 400 to 500 young men from our town and to work in the canal. And I was one of them working in the irrigation canal, digging ditches with shovels and wheelbarrows. But the ghetto was very bad. But when I was going to work to the canal, we were working in an area where the farmers, we had a lot of food. The farmers had potatoes and everything. I used to go steal the potatoes from the field. And then I went to farmers knocking the door, begging for bread. And then the farmers asked me if I could sell them something. So whatever the Germans give us clothing, I sold it to the farmers for food. And then when we came home, we shared with my parents, and with my sister and brother. Well,
David, before
this didn't last long.
Okay.
It was going on, but until September 27, 1942, the day I was born, the Germans took all the people from my town on a train and shipped them to Treblinka, to the settlement. Actually, they took them there to kill. They killed everybody, 8,000 people in my town. My mother, my father, my uncles, my sister, my brother, everybody. My grandparents died in the ghetto for hunger. They couldn't survive. So after they did that, the Germans took us away from the canal and shipped me to a place called Pionki, a big ammunition factory in Poland, not far from my hometown, maybe 20 or 25 kilometers. And they taught me how to make explosive for bullets. And I worked in a centrifuge in a department. For 2 years I was making explosive. And I became like a chemist. I knew how to do it, and they kept me alive.
it was very dangerous work, wasn't it, David?
The gases were eating us up. They give us special clothing, special shoes, and wooden shoes. And a lot of people die from exhaustion and from the gases. But I worked with civilians, Polish people who worked in the factory before the war. So whatever the Polish people were sharing some food with us, and this helped me a lot. And I did a lot of work for a Polish man who he used to work at the factory there, and he used to get he got paid. He was going to work and come home.
So the Poles were able to get paid as regular jobs.
This was the regular job before the war, and during the war, Germans occupied them. But us, they didn't pay. They gave us only some clothing. Who did kill other people? They give us the clothing. Mm-hmm. And some clothing, some shoes were good, so I sold it to the Polish people who I worked with. Mm-hmm. They brought me food. And this kept me going, and I was healthier. Because if I didn't have no food, we couldn't work. The gases, we had to eat milk, pork, any kind of fat stuff, butter, we didn't have that.
You told me there was lots of smuggling and bartering for food.
Yeah, and also we have worked with all kind of chemicals, and also we used 100 proof alcohol to make a special explosive. So who worked with the alcohol? Only Jewish people. The Germans didn't allow the Poles because the Poles were drinking. And Jewish people not drinking. So I stole a lot of the alcohol, put it in little bottles, and exchanged with the Poles.
David, you told me that non-smokers were lucky.
Okay, talking about smoking.
Yeah.
Well, cotton is used to make explosive powder. The Germans didn't have no cotton, so they made imitation cotton from paper. And there was a department, and a lot of people worked there, a lot of Jewish women, a lot of men, and there was one guy who worked specially for my department. He was putting the cotton on the conveyor and shipped to my department, which I mixed with the chemicals. This guy was a smoker. He worked with me and 3 other guys. We were 5 people in this department. And he smoked cigarettes. He gave away his food for a cigarette. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he volunteered, and I also volunteered sometimes to clean the Germans' offices and everything else, and that the factory. And we picked up butts with cigarettes with German smoked, and I put it in my pocket. And I sold it for food. Whoever needs a cigarette, give away their bread. This guy was smoking, was night shift, and he worked 12 hours a day. He was tired, and the cigarettes fell on the conveyor and ignited. And the conveyor came in right now. The apartment was a big fire. Mm-hmm. They took us out, and they were going to hang us. They didn't fool around. But what happened, there were two old men, Germans, they were engineers, they were in charge of my department. They came in, one of them is Dr. Witte, and the other one was Dr. Lesche. I'll never forget their name, I have to remember that name. These two Germans asked the Gestapo not to kill us because they need the factory going. And they let us go. They canceled the hanging. There was an announcement they go and put a big splash. Everybody should see that we were hanged because we did sabotage.
David, you also tried escaping from Pianki several times.
Yeah, I escaped one time. I got shot, and I didn't escape from the factory. I escaped from the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the barbed wire. We cut the barbed wire with 4 guys, and somebody must have snitched them. The Germans. They were waiting. Germans were standing with white uniforms, white clothing, with machine guns. We were trying to get through the machine guns, and I got shot in my leg. I was lying in the snow, and the German thought I was dead. They left us lying there in the snow, and the guys from the camp came in and they took us in. And the doctor saw me up, and after a while I went back to work.
And in addition to getting shot, you were also, if I remember correctly, seriously burned in a locomotive fire.
This was later on, but before that, I escaped once again from the factory with a guy named Moishe Matis. He was a big, tall, maybe 7 feet tall to me. And he was working like a gorilla, you know, and he was working for a Polish worker in the factory. He was taking out the chemicals from the train, from the tankers, and put it in the building. He said to me, there was a chance to escape, and we joined the underground Polish army in the forest. We could go fight the Germans. So I agreed with him, and we went out under the barbed wire, and we went to the forest. And we walked in the villages, and we saw big posters everywhere we went. Mm-hmm. 10 liters of vodka to bring in a Jew. The Germans give him 10 liters of vodka to bring in a Jew, dead or alive. What we did, we made a U-turn and back to the factory. Mm-hmm. I was more secure in the factory than outside. Mm-hmm. This is all that escape.
David, as
and at the end, I escaped again.
And we'll come back to that.
I survived this time.
David, as there you are in Pianki doing the slave labor, but the Russians were closing in, and as the Russians got closer, you were forced out of Pianki. Tell us what
the Germans ran to Russia because they took over Europe and they wanted to take Russia. Russia was not so easy for the Germans to take. So the winter came and the Germans were freezing to death, and the Russians were burning all the houses, all the little towns, all the villages, all the food. I mean, the Russians were burning everything up for the Germans. The Germans were freezing to death. They couldn't fight. The tanks, the ammunition, it was cold. Everything was cold, and they were losing the war. And the Russians pushed the Germans back. And the Germans were taking everything they could. They dismantled the Pianki factory. They take us with them to Germany to work in Germany, and we had to march in the snow in the winter in January 1945. 1944, December till 1945.
Tell us about leaving Pianki and going to Auschwitz.
Well, I was in a school in Virginia, and one young man asked me, did I ever encounter a good German? So I come to that.
Okay.
So I told him, yeah, we had a good German, a nice engineer who used to come in the factory, he used to fix the pumps or the machinery, And he was very polite. He said good morning. He was thank you. He was very pleasant guy. He never hit us, never beat us. He was so this was a nice German, okay? But when the Germans were fleeing and trying to escape, and they wanted to dismantle the machinery, these nice Germans came in to our camp and asked for volunteers. Other Germans came in, nobody wanted to go. We were hiding under the bed, we were hiding in the forest, we didn't want to go. But when he came in, everybody was raising their hand and running to him because we knew that he was a nice guy. And this German got confused, and he thought that we running to him and heard him because we saw him walking into the gate. He pulled a pistol and shot the crowd. And he was the good German. He killed a guy and he injured another one. He was a good German, but he was still a Nazi. He still pulled a gun and shot in the crowd. So this is the answer I give him about a good German. So what happened, they finally took us out by train and shipped us to Auschwitz. We came with about 100 people in a wagon, in a freight car. And no food, a disinfectant inside. A lot of them didn't make it. We were choked inside. No water, no nothing. We came to Auschwitz, actually Birkenau. The train stopped at Birkenau, then from Birkenau we walked to Auschwitz. And talking about my burn, my fire got injured, but before this happened, I was working on a locomotive to transporting the powder to our place to roll it, make it plastic rollers. So it was a hot day or something, and a spark came out, and some powder who was on the rail track ignited and burned me in my arms and my face and my legs. So I didn't go to work anymore. I got creams on me. And when I came to Auschwitz, I still was with a crust on my face and everywhere else. And there was a guy, a prisoner, who helped me get out of the freight car, said to me, "What happened to you?" And I told him. So he said, "If a German will ask you what happened to you, tell them that you are a chemist, you making explosive, they're going to need you." Sure enough, a Gestapo man came over and checked everybody else, and he put me aside. Me and other people who asked. And the rest of them, a lot of them got killed. And it took us to the gypsy camp, where all gypsies were living. There was a barrack. There was maybe 75 or 100 of us separate people. In the meantime, a German Jewish doctor used to come with a Red Cross band, and he was giving me creams, and this fell off, and I got clear. And other Germans, dignitaries came in and picked people, so they picked us to work in the coal mine.
And before you tell us about the coal mine, you told the Gestapo officer that you were a chemist, which is saved your life.
But he didn't. He just put me aside in case somebody needs me. Yeah. But I didn't need me to be a chemist. He took me to the coal mine. So I went with the other people working the coal mine. And the coal mine was the worst thing in the world. Underground, 12 hours a day. We had a quota. We had to make 18 wagons of coal. Every person, little small wagons. We couldn't even do that. Sometimes they left us to stay overnight in the mine.
David, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Because the quota, these 18 carts that you had to do... 18
little wagons of coal, every one had to produce.
You found a way to trick the Germans, right?
We tricked them, but they find what happened that we stole the previous shift, whoever worked before, and we put out our numbers on the wagon and took theirs off. And this was going on like this, and the Germans didn't have much coal. were cheating. They also the mine were people who was the regular job, and we took their call. And sometimes, and then it was very bad. In my department, we were hungry. We had not the food, but they give us was very bad food. We used to call it mamalika, a Romanian name for our food, for our soup. Very bad, and the bread was sticky like glue. And we didn't keep it because we were scared to lose it. You have no bread, you keep it in my pocket, or somebody steals it from you. So whatever I had, a piece of bread, the morning I ate it right away up, didn't try to save. I mean, starving later on. And then a lot of people were hungry, going around hungry. And coal mines, there has layers of coal, layers of stones, and layers of some kind of clay. It looks like margarine, like butter. Some people were eating that, just hallucinating and eating.
The clay.
They never made it. He died. In my department, there was a young man who died that way. They took him out. And the next day, they replaced him with other young man, a religious Jewish boy with a little beard and tall, skinny, in which constantly was praying. Whenever you looked at him, he was praying. His name was Reuben. He was from a town called Lodz in Poland. And he was praying all the time, and we talked to each other that he's crazy. He's praying, and he had a lot of times to say, he's crazy. He said, I'm not crazy. You find out, I'm not crazy. He was praying. He recited the psalm, continually recited the psalm. And then there was a Gestapo man, a supervisor, with a uniform, and he walked around with a stick, like a pick with a pick handle.
Like a pick, yeah.
Made out of copper. And he was hitting people over the head and kill them. He killed a lot of people. He's supposed to go around and check the coal, where to drill, where like an engineer. In my group, there was a Polish miner, a regular guy who used to go home and came to work, and he was the one who was drilling and putting the dynamite in. When you put dynamite in, you have to, after you're ready to blow, you have to yell fire in the hole, or watch out, or Achtung, but pass out to look. This miner said to us, I'm not going to call nothing. I'm not going to say Achtung, I'm not going to say fire in the hole or anything like this. You moved away. The German came, he ignited the things, and he blew up the German to pieces. A whole wall of coal fell on him, and he got covered up with, he got killed. Reuben came over to us and said, didn't God help us? And I never forget it, because if somebody asks me about God, I bring up that story. Because he believed 100% that then everybody would shut up. Nobody could say a word anymore to him. And he survived and lives in Jerusalem.
David, while you were at Auschwitz, you also had surgery while you were there.
Well, every morning when we were going to work, it's a roll call. You stand in the line, and the Gestapo man passed by, he checks everybody. With a stick in his hand, he checked. I had my glands swell up. And I was covering up with my collar from my jacket, my dirty coal jacket. And he noticed that, he came over, he pushed away the coat, and my glands were swollen like this. He called up a other couple, and they took me to a clinic. They put me down in the clinic, and they cut me without anesthetic, without anything else. They tied me up on the table, And this guy, the doctor who was doing the job, was smiling at me with a smiling face. He looked at me, and he cut me. No injection, no medicine, no nothing. Just tied me up, and the blood was coming out, and I was lying there in pain. After the operation, after the experiment, they threw me up and left me lying in a bed. In that clinic, there was a lot of prisoners who were working as
like orderlies.
Orderlies and nuns, you know. And there was one guy who was like a orderly, and he was a nurse. He was from my hometown in Poland. And he was a neighbor, not far, he lived about 2 blocks away from me, and I knew him very well. I knew his mother. His mother was the post office director. And he saw me. He said, "They're going to kill you. They're going to kill you, Duvcha. They're going to kill you." He called me Duvcha in Polish. My name is David, so he knew me. We played soccer. He was a coach. He said, "I will try to save you." He made a false paper in German, and he tied me up and everything else, and I'm able to go back to work. And I walked out from the clinic and went back to my barrack and went to work with my things there.
And David, I think that just recently you found in the archives the museum recently acquired the German records of that surgery.
Yeah, I got them right here because I got copies of it. And the German doctor who operated on me, is a story about him. He was a doctor in the Russian front, and he got sick, so somebody advised him to get a job in Auschwitz. So he applied, and they took him into Auschwitz, and he became a doctor in the concentration camps. So they sent him to Jaworzno, the camp which the coal mine was. And his name was Horst Fischer. He was a married German with children, and he had to give him a home. He was doing the experiment. They claim in here that he killed 70,000 people. He escaped and was living in East Germany under the Russian. About 10 or 15 years ago, they find him and he hanged him. He got a trial and he was hanged. He was a doctor in a little town with his family, and like nothing happened. And here, this is his report, his signature, and my name, and what he did to me, the report. So they find this in Germany in the archives.
Just recently.
Yeah.
David, in January 1945, one day while you were in the coal mines, you were all pulled out of the coal mine and then forced on a death march.
We the one named it death march because the Germans told us to hook up under arms to each other, 8 in a row, and march towards Germany. The snow in the main highway were full of German tanks and trucks running away from the Russian. And us, they told us to go in the fields, in the snow, in the mud, country roads, and whoever fell down, a bullet in the head. And thousands of people got killed like this. I had a friend next to me, he couldn't walk anymore. And he fell down. German went over, boom, in the head. And I stopped and I took his jacket and I prayed over him and I asked for forgiveness. I take his jacket. He didn't need it anymore. And the jacket was full of blood. I wiped it off with the snow.
And this was the winter of 1944, 1945.
It was cold, it was
horrible
very cold.
Winter, yeah.
And we keep walking. Then we walked to a place called Bleichhammer. Not the concentration camps. There were a lot of British soldiers there, Russian prisoners a lot. and a lot of and this just chased us in. No food, no nothing. But there were buildings, and everybody was trying to break into the buildings. There was warehouses with a lot of food, but everybody took out whatever they could. I went to one warehouse. There was margarine. So I grabbed the margarine. I took margarine, put it under my shirts, put it in my pants, whatever I can. It was so cold, we had nothing to eat, but the Germans was announcing to come out again, marching. We didn't want to go, so I went with 2 Russian prisoners to a barbed wire. We went under the snow, we went out, and went to the forest.
So you broke out of the
We
Black
went
Hammer.
out, went down Black Hammer. We stayed in the forest for 6 days and 6 nights. And we had bombardments, and the planes were coming and going, and we had the war was going on, and we didn't. We lied there under the snow, under pine trees, and we ate bark. And the Russian 2 prisoners, Russian soldiers, were looking for mushroom roots under the snow, and they grabbed some of it. We shared, and I shared the margarine with them. And they scratched it off of my body because the margarine melted. And I didn't take no bath. It was so dirty. Everybody licked it like the best ice cream. You know.
And this helped you to survive.
And then we decided to get out because I was freezing to death. My toe froze up. The Russian came. We saw Russian people with the guns.
So the Russian army was coming.
Yeah, we didn't know if they were Russian or Germans. Okay. But we didn't care anymore. And they were Russian. And one Russian soldier picked me up, carried me. I weighed maybe 60 or 70 kilos. I was nothing.
You were half of your body weight.
I was skinny. I was just bones.
Yeah.
And they took me into a woman's home. A German woman with a daughter lived, and the Russian said, "Take care of me." They spoke to her in German. Actually, they were Russians. One was a Russian Jewish officer, but he spoke Jewish too. And also German, but an officer.
So he ordered these German women to take you in?
Yeah, she took care of me. She didn't have much to eat anyway. She made some kind of cream soup or something, and she had a cook, and she bathed me. She gave me some clothing, for women's clothing. There no men. There must have be in the army or somewhere. And I was going to leave. She was crying. She didn't want me to go. And then the reason she didn't want me to go is because she didn't want the Russian soldiers to come there. They 2 women. They raped them. She said, "Stay, please." She had a cow. The cow didn't have what to eat, she told me. A cow's a barn. You know, so. But what happened to Reuben, the young man who believed in miracles, he was going with us, with the 2 Russian prisoners to escape, but he got injured. Something happened to him and was bleeding. He must be a bullet or a sharp knife from somewhere. He couldn't walk anymore, so we put him in a barn, and we kept going. And after the war, he was fined by the Russians also, and they put him in a hospital, and he lived in Germany. And from Germany, he was the British, the Israelis, the Palestinian Jews from Palestine came to Germany and smuggled him to Israel. But the British caught him and locked him up in Cyprus in a place called Famagusta. And after the Israel became independent, he came to Israel. And then, when I went to Panama, and from Panama I went to Israel, when I came to our absorption center in Haifa, who do I see? Reuben standing there. He recognized me. religious guy with long beard, and then praying. And he said, "My God, I can't believe it. That's me." And I was already in Panama, and I was in the army already, and everything else. And then I went to see him one time, and he lives in Jerusalem. He has 11 children.
Wow. David, in the little time that we still have some time, once you were liberated, you decided to go back to Poland. Tell us about going back to Poland.
When I got back on the road, when the lady, the German woman was crying and I was leaving her, she told me how to get to the main highway. That's all we saw is Russian army and refugees. Everybody was walking out from holes, from hiding. And the German houses were empty. A lot of German houses were empty because the Germans ran away, they escaped for the Russian. And there was a lot of beautiful homes and with beds and furniture and everything else. So we, on the way walking, we stopped in homes every day on a different house.
And then the next day get up and continue walking
And
towards
then,
Poland.
yeah, and in one house I picked up a big coat, a German officer's coat, and I put it on, and the Russians saw me, so they I'm not a German, I'm a refugee. They said, take it off because we don't know who you are. I had to throw away a warm German coat. And then one time I stopped in a home and I stole a bicycle. I was in a shack outside, and I was walking with the bicycle to the main highway. Two Russians with a jeep came over, knocked me off in the bicycle, and took it.
Stole the bicycle from you?
Yeah, no, they took it back to that woman. The Russians were friendly with that woman, and
She said you took her bicycle.
I took the bicycle. It was a hard way to go home, and then a lot of times the Russian soldiers stop with the trucks and they give you a lift, but some of them are Russian women soldiers, and they were worse than the Russian. The women very bad. They wanted me to go with them, you know. They were the real McCoy's characters. So finally I reached Poland, in my hometown, and I come, nobody there. I saw the home where I was born, where I lived, other people living there.
Right.
I walked in, the Paul was scared. He said, "Here's papers. I live here now."
This is your home.
My house.
Yeah.
And I recognized things. So I said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to take nothing. I'm not going to stay." And then I stayed for a few days. I went to a Polish man who used to work for my father, named Mr. Alewski. And I walked in the house, and there were all my furniture, which before they moved together, we took a lot of stuff there to hide it for him, and a sled, and my tables, my cabinets, and furniture, drapes, everything, my mother's. I didn't say nothing. I didn't care for it. I was a single guy. I have nothing else. I'd rather be empty, you know, not the heck of luggage. I didn't want to be tied up with something. So then other people come back, other friends of mine come back, and we start organizing, and we went look for empty places where the people don't live, and we took over a house, and there was a friend of mine, Sam, Regina, and everybody else. We keep coming back, and then we got notification from the Israeli emissaries who came to Europe to help us.
And to bring you to Palestine, right?
And they told us to go to Czechoslovakia, go to Germany. From there we're going to transfer you to Palestine, you know. So we listened to them, and we keep going from one place to the other. And I wind up in a DP camp, displaced person camp in Germany called Vierenwald. And over there, the Americans came in, and they give us milk and honey, so they call. We get everything. They give us cigarettes and candy. And all this American military ration was coming to us. We ate, we slept, we got the homes. So, but I had no money. So with cigarettes, I didn't smoke. Candy, I didn't eat. Now, coffee, stacks of coffee the American give us, I sold it to the German, and I start making money. I make money, I was selling it in the black market, so they call, and I accumulate some dollars. The big American dollars, who were not 200 years old maybe. And I went to live in Pierre. From there I went to France, in Paris. I spent everything over there. And from over there I went to Holland and took our ship to Panama.
And this was 1947 when you left for Panama. Why Panama?
Why? When I was in Imperial in DP camp, the American ambassador from Munich sent me a letter that somebody in Panama is looking for me. I was on a list, a survivor. So he had my name. And this was a friend of mine who went to school with me, and his parents emigrated to Panama before the war, and they were looking for relatives and friends. So he asked me if I want to come to Panama. So I agreed.
And you went to Panama.
I could have come to the United States right away, but it takes a while. So with Panama, there was a ship going to Panama from Holland. You go ahead. So I went to Panama.
And you spent a year in Panama at that time.
And I went to Panama, and I was a while there, and lived with the. I was in Panama for a while. I didn't like the Panama City, so I went to live with the Indians, and the border from Panama and Costa Rica. And I was making leather for them. They were making shoes. They were nice people. And over there, I met a Jewish guy named Sam Sand was his name. And when he saw me, he said, "Oh, you crazy. What are you doing here? You're not going to get married. You're going to live with the Indians there. You're going, why don't you go to Palestine? Israel is planning to be independence and all that stuff. And the Arab threatened to a war, and they need people like you, young people." So I said, okay, I go. So there's going to be a ship in Panama who's going to pick up 180 trucks in the canal zone, and they're going to pick up a lot of airplane engines. You could join that ship. So the ship was named Vasiliades RAF. RAF for Royal Air Force. A Greek ship, the father named the ship after the son who got killed in the Royal Air Force. So I joined that ship, and I became in charge of that cargo. And when I came to Haifa, to Israel, I joined the Haggadah, and I went to the army, and then they sent me to the desert, and that's it.
Can I get you to just say?
We've been the war.
Can I get you to say just a little bit, David, on that journey on that ship to Israel? You were towing a boat, a PT boat, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, when I joined that ship, there was 2 Mexican Jewish guys, volunteers, and the crew, and me. Then when I joined the ship, they got a notification that we should go to Veracruz, Mexico. Why? Because there was a torpedo boat have to be towed to Israel, to Palestine. Then all of a sudden they changed it, and they said that don't go to Veracruz anymore, you go to Cuba, to a place called Antilla. Why? Because 2 American Navy men will take that torpedo boat from Veracruz to Cuba. this torpedo boat was a German torpedo boat the American government got from the Germans. And the two Navy men who was going to take it to Cuba stole the torpedo boat for $80,000. The Jewish agency paid him $80,000.
And that was to become part of the Israeli Navy, right?
They stole it. They stole it from a Navy yard somewhere in the United States, and they took it to Cuba. First to Veracruz, then to Cuba. In Veracruz, they went the ship before, but they got sugar, a lot of sugar on that ship. Well, we went to Cuba, we tied up. No, first from Panama we went to Cuba. In Panama they got cable to tie the torpedo boat to tow it to Israel. That's what happened. The torpedo never made it to Israel. We went to Gibraltar, went to the Mediterranean. Near Greece was a storm, and then filled with water, and we had to chop off the cable, and they never made it. So the first boat the Israelis were supposed to have never made it.
But you made it and served in the Israeli army, saw combat during the War of Independence, went back to Panama, and then came to the United States and met Adel.
Well, I met the Israeli consul from Panama in Israel.
Okay.
And I was discharged from the army, and I had nowhere to go. I had no family, no nothing. And there were thousands of people coming in. There's nowhere to sleep. I was discharged. So I slept on a bench in a park. Yeah, I couldn't find a job. One day, I was in an area called Dizengoff in Nordau. And I went over to a kiosk. There's a park. And I was hungry, and I was going to ask for the man to give me some apple cake in soda water. And there was two ladies sitting there, or a few ladies talking to each other. And one lady yelled out to the man behind the counter, "Mr. Bayer, Mr. Bayer." I turned around, and I thought they called me. The man behind the counter was named Bayer, and was our uncle. And I never knew our uncle. He was my grandfather's brother. And he came to Palestine before the war from Germany. He was German. He was a Russian soldier in the First World War, and he surrendered to the Germans. He lived in Germany, married a German woman, and lived in Germany till 1938. 1938 he went to Palestine. And he lived there, and I didn't know her uncle. He asked me who I am. So I told him, my mother used to tell me about a cousin who went by motorcycle to Palestine. He said, yeah, he is here, lives in Bnei Brak. And I went to see him. So I got family. So I couldn't find a job. I stayed with my uncle. And I met a man from Panama. I was a consul. And he said, there's a ship going back to Panama. If you want to go to Panama for free, you could go on the ship. So I said, okay, I take it. So I could come back to Israel anytime I want to. So I went back to Panama, and I stayed in Panama for a while. And then I came here. I stayed 8 years though in Panama, actually. He came here in 1955 with $9.35 in my pocket. And I came to Miami. I got up the plane and took a bus to Washington. And that's it. And I started here in Washington.
When did you meet Adel?
I met Adel when I went to see a friend in New York, who a survivor, also lived in New York. I had her address. And she introduced me to my wife, and we hit each other. That's it.
That's it.
I think I married.
And now you have...
And I wanted to go back to Panama, but my wife said, we went to Panama. I went with her to Panama, and she said, Devil's Island, she called it. Too hot. It's very hot over there. and that's it.
David,
And,
we have a couple of quick minutes for some questions from our audience, for a couple of questions. You feel up to it? It's a couple of questions?
yeah, if I know the answer.
Okay, all right. So we have microphones on either side of the aisle. Please wait till you have a microphone in your hand. Make your question as brief as you can. I'll repeat it to make sure that we hear it and everybody in the audience hears
Yeah,
it.
because my gadget here is not so good.
Okay. You've done great so far, so we'll I saw a hand go up somewhere. All right.
Oh, I was just wondering, I don't know if you can speak to it or not, since you were sort of younger before the war really got started. But a lot of people, I think, are drawing parallels between what was happening in the 30s in Germany, Poland, to today, what's happening sort of in certain places. And I'm just wondering if you see any parallels.
I think for our purposes, we'd like to just stay focused on his story
Oh, okay.
itself, if you don't mind, if that's okay. Yeah,
Well,
was asking about your thoughts about the world today compared to then, but
I have a lot of,
Yeah.
but I don't want to talk about it. Why? I'm a very big critic of everything. If I start talking, I will criticize half of the world anyway.
okay.
So I don't want to.
But let me just say this, that when we finish, David is going to stay up on the stage. And so if anybody would like to come up and ask another question, talk to him a bit more about anything, please feel free to do that there. And I assure you, David has something to say about most everything. Any other questions? Oh, back here. Thank you.
Hi, David. Back here.
Got a back row, yeah.
So much of what you said is so awful as it relates to humanity, but what you were able to overcome is so inspiring. And I was wondering, where did you find the strength to persist and to keep going?
David, the question is, in light of all that you went through, where did you find your strength to be able to persist and keep going and survive?
You know, when I was working for the irrigation canal outside my hometown, and I still stay in the house, every time I walked out to my house, my mother said to me, every day, she said to me, don't forget you are a Jew. Don't change your religion. Don't stay a Jew, die a Jew. Because that's what my family was and is and should be. And I listened to my mother. And I wanted to survive to show the world that I am a Jew and I'm bringing a family. The reason I didn't marry in Panama, the reason I didn't marry after the war and over is because I wanted to marry a Jewish woman, and that's what I married her, my wife.
All right.
I wanted to have a family, create another family the Germans killed. My father was only 42 or 43 years old. He was a religious man when he was young. I don't know how was the religion after that. Maybe he changed it. Maybe he realized that God didn't listen to us.
And
Maybe he
David,
listens now.
and David, now you have a great grandson.
My great-grandson, he gonna live to 120, like I will. I will live to 120. You all come back 20 more years from now, I'll be here.
We will have him scheduled, I promise that. We're going to close in just a moment. I'm going to turn back to David to close our program. I want to thank all of you for being here with us today. Remind you that we will have a first-person program each Wednesday and Thursday until the middle of August. It's our tradition at First Person that our first person has the last word. When David finishes, as I said a moment ago, he will stay up on the stage. Please feel free to come up here, shake his hand, say hi, get a photo taken with him, whatever you'd like to do. So on that, David, your last thought.
My last word, it couldn't be the last word because I have to start again.
Okay. And we have 20 more programs to go at least.
The last word, remember. That's all you have to do is remember. This could happen again and again and again. You should not allow this to happen to anybody. because it does happen now, and nobody even thinks about it, nobody knows about it, but it could happen again and again. To kill so many people. It's not only Jewish. All the Gypsies in Europe were wiped out. Millions of Russians were wiped out. I had a German capo. I don't know if you know what a capo is. He was a murderer. He came in camp in Jaworzno and walked around with a golf club. He knocked you down, hit you over the head, kill you. I find out that he was in jail for killing his mother. And the German Nazi took him out from jail and put him in a concentration camp to kill the Jewish people. He was a killer. He killed anybody. He killed his own mother. He was in jail for killing his mother. And nobody got punished. I went, there was a Nazi who, they caught him after the war, and he claims that nothing happened to anybody. And we didn't know what's happening. We didn't know that they're concentration camps. How can you say such things? I was caught one day, taken one day out from the barrack and taken to the commanders from the camp, Jaworzno's house, and his wife told us to dig a garden, dig the ground for a garden. And this same commander from the camp was shooting people like flies, and his wife saw it, and I saw it. And after the war, he got locked up with the wife and the family, and they said that we didn't know anything, we didn't know. She was living right in front of the camp.
Right.
She saw this barbed wire, she saw the people, she saw the shooting, the killing every day. They were lying and saying that we didn't know anything. We didn't know that the Germans were killing so many people. They didn't see anything, didn't hear anything.
So we must remember all of this.
Remember, that's all I want you to know. It's not only me, it's all my friends, all my brothers and sisters. They were died for nothing, for nothing. They didn't harm nobody. The German people listened to one man who was not normal. He was not normal. He was mentally sick. They took it from me, give it to them. They went to Poland to get. They took out everything from Poland: oil, coal, my mother's jewelry. Some German woman probably wearing my mother's jewelry. And my mother had a lot of jewelry.
Thank you, David.
And I have to live like this all my life till I die. And thinking about it. And I'm dreaming about my sisters, my brother every day and every night. Never goes out of my mind, never. Always thinking about them.
Thank you, David.
She was a beautiful girl. My sister one day she took a pair of boots. We were still living in our house. She took a pair of boots and went to a farm, put in a wooden cross. I had a Polish man give me a cross with a chain and a wooden cross. She put the wooden cross as a Christian, and she put things on her head, and she sneaked out of the barbed wire and she walked to a village about 3 kilometers away of my town. And she got groceries and food, potatoes and vegetables and everything else from the boots. And I know the farmer because the farmer's son, the farmer was dead, but the mother lived there. And they gave her everything, and she was coming back and never come back home. She never came home. And I never saw my sister again. I find out that they put her on the train to Treblinka. locked up in jail, and then when the transport was going away, they put it on the train.
I know you wanted to tell us that earlier, and I'm glad you had the chance to do that now. Thank you, David.
The pain goes never away. I always, sometimes I cry. Nobody sees it. My sister was taking care of me. She was protecting me. She was good to me. One time, when I was a kid, I went away to a group to see, not far from our home, a group of gypsies. They were dancing and playing harmonica. And my mother didn't know what happened to me. I went out the house. My sister didn't know, nobody known, but she came and she figured out that I must be with the gypsies. So they were scared that maybe the gypsies will take me away. So my sister went to see me, and she came and picked me up. I wandered away, I was maybe 8 or 9 years old.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.